Alright guys, so another video in this 212s on 6K install series in my car here. Remember, we got a 2018 Mitsubishi Mirage. And so what have we done so far? We've basically done a preview of the equipment that we're going to use, those two Savard 12s on that Incriminator I.A 6K. I'll let this car drive by. And then we've removed the system that's in there, which was that Pierce Audio 15 on the Tar Amps 5K. And the last thing we did, we'll let that car pass. The last thing we did was we built that amp rack. So what we're gonna do now is build this box. So what we got here is, got a little kerf right here to fit this edge. This box is about 3 cubic feet. Got a 6-inch aero port from Big Ass Ports. Stickers are coming off. And it's tuned to about 33, 34, I think, somewhere in that ballpark. Anyway, I'd like to tune it lower, but that'll be another video, I suppose. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for following along this video series. This is what we're going to be doing next. I'm going to show you how I built this subwoofer box. 3 cubic feet, aero port, 212s. Let's get it. What's up, guys? So we're on, I don't know, trial box number 2 or 3 or 4 with this build. I did attempt a fiberglass box, but realized that was not going to work. The amount of fiberglass I was going to have to use to make this thick enough to hold up to those subs, it just was more fiberglassing than I was willing to do, given that I'm not really a fiberglasser. I just didn't trust myself to put in that kind of time only to have a box that didn't work. So we're gonna go a curved MDF box, with a Curf. And so you can see I've got my template for the Baffle already. And really what I'm showing here is that there is no way I can make my box any wider than that template, or else my amp isn't going to fit. Now, it's not completely tight up against that mounting location, but you can see there's not much room to work with. So this is the idea that we're going for, right? Curved on that corner. That way the door will shut. It doesn't need to be curved on this side. Port's gonna be sticking up right there, right here like that. Everything's gonna be up. Subs are gonna be reverse mounted. Port is gonna mount right here in this hole. Gonna be like that. And this is just my Baffle template, and I'm just measuring it to see what kind of room we got. And there is just no way that I'm going to be able to go wider than this. As a matter of fact, I might have to go a little bit narrower than this. I don't know. We're just going to have to see, I guess. So guys, what we're doing here is making the 2-layer baffle. Now let me show you what I've done. So as you can see, I used that template piece, which is right there, to just give me a rough idea of where I'm going to want these holes. And then what I did was I found the center, right? You just create a box and then you draw an X, and then where the X meets, that's your center, right? You can see I messed it up over there, but I got it. The reason I did that is so I can use my circle jig to cut out some perfect circles here. And all you really need to know to do that is where the center of the circle is going to be. So I also left this a little long on each side. That way when I go to cut this with my saw, everything is lined up perfectly. The cuts are made exactly the same. That way each layer of this double layer baffle is exactly the same. That's why I'm gluing these pieces together now, and then I'll cut the holes out and make all my cuts well, for that reason, so that the sides are perfectly even. So anyway, that's why I did it that way. Okay guys, so there you have it. Got the hole cut for one of the subs. I always like to make sure that it fits before I cut the other one, you know, for obvious reasons. That is quite snug in there, and I actually had to go one size bigger on my router than what the cutout diameter is. Must be related to the thickness of the blade, I don't know. And as you can see, I had to adjust my router a couple of times to get the depth and just make sure things on my circle jig weren't coming loose, because that would be a pain in the butt to have that thing come loose on you and then mess your hole up. So let me show you something else too. Okay, this is why I like to use a circle jig. Because look at where our hole would have been if we had just used a jigsaw and cut around with our jigsaw. So you'd have had this wonky hole that probably looks straight to the naked eye. But now we know that that's a perfect circle. So anyway, it takes a little bit more time, a little bit more effort to use a circle jig. But if you have one, I think it's probably the better way to go in the long run if you're looking for a quality box that's going to last you a long time. So anyway, we're just going to do the same procedure for the other hole, and then we're going to cut out this bad boy right here. So there you have it. There's the baffle, 2 layers, 3/4 inch MDF. Got the whole thing cut out, used my router as you guys saw. All I did was use my jigsaw to cut this shape. But as you can see, this is why I stacked the baffle before I cut it. Because now instead of trying to get these 2 pieces to line up, I know they line up because I cut them together, right? And we left this a little bit long. My actual cut line is this line. But I'll explain to you guys why I did that once we get to that portion of the build. But anyway, there's the baffle. Just show you guys while I have it here. dust off of it. But as you can see, this is gonna fit right in here like that. So anyway, you guys get the idea. So as you can see, I got my router holes cut out, right? And then that gives you an idea of how this is gonna go. I'm gonna attach this flange to the port, and the port's gonna drop right down there and like that. Both of the subs are gonna be inverted. So I'm sure you can imagine, you're gonna look at this back hatch here and just see those two subs sticking up with the port sticking up right in the middle, just like that. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to attach the back piece, sidewall piece, and this side, so it's gonna leave out the curved side. Then that'll start to give us a 3D shape that we can test fit in the car to make sure it fits. I, as you can see, like to use pocket holes. I accidentally drilled some of them too high, so there are some that are not gonna get used. Oops. But that shouldn't be a big deal. It's gonna be the wood glue that's holding all this together anyway. So let's attach those two pieces. Okay, so we got these put together. I did end up running some screws, you know, in the bottoms through the wood. Just because I didn't really feel like those pocket hole screws were doing a good job. So we ended up doing it like that as well, just to really make sure that they're secured in there. All right, so we're gonna try this Kerf now. I've never done a Kerf bend before, but there are a lot of videos online on how to do this. I don't know if maybe this is too fat. Like this gapping here, but I don't know. I guess we're about to find out. One thing I did do was run a couple of test runs here to see how deep I wanted my saw. See, this one's too much. Like I almost cut all the way through. So I think we're gonna go with something like that. Probably a good idea to do before you start cutting your actual piece, you know, for obvious reasons. So we're gonna give this a shot and see how it goes. Like I said, I've never done this before, so I have no idea if I'm doing it right or not. Well, it's definitely got a bend to it. We'll try to shape it to this box and see if it works. Okay guys, so what I've done already is I've filled these gaps, excuse me, filled these gaps with construction adhesive, and then I've put in my pocket holes. This is a pretty tight bend. I'm gonna try my best to get this on video, but basically what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay this down, and I'm gonna pocket hole it and screw it into place as I curve it, and have it kind of hold itself in place as I move along. Like I said, I'm gonna try my best to get this on video. I'm not sure how it's gonna turn out, but we'll do our best here. But anyway, we got that Kerf in there. That actually turned out better than I was expecting, if I'm being honest. Got a little bit of splitting right there, but one thing that didn't really line up, I must not have made this cut as round as I thought I did, because it lines up on the top pretty good. It lines up there, not perfectly, but a lot better than it did on the bottom. So anyway, it's coming along. We're getting there. One thing we are going to have to do, I've already beveled this here, and I'm even going to have to take a little bit more off and bevel this, because again, we're running into fitment issues, and you can even see where it hits that hard edge right there, and it makes fitting it in here very, 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 very tight. So I'll show you what I'm going to do to fix that, and then I'll bring you guys back on to update you. Okay guys, well, this thing's taking shape now. We got our Curf, right? Let me show you what I did to strengthen that up. I made another curved piece and then screwed it into place and just coated the thing in wood glue. As you can see, it's not even dry. And that was to make up this space here, right? I don't want any air gap right there, right? Because I really want this thing to be as strong as possible. Same with this here. I put another little piece here because had to take off a little bit on the back side of my baffle so that it would clear that seat when it shut. And so then I just wanted a little bit of extra meat for that to screw into if I needed it. So that's what we did there. Now all we have to do is put the baffle in place. I'm using the construction adhesive because I want it to also serve as like a gasket to fill in any of these areas where it's not quite even, to fill in these holes, right? I want it to be nice and thick so that it fills in those spaces. All right, guys, look at that. Box sitting in there nice and pretty. We are running into a fitment issue though. See, this needs to be as far that way as possible. So let's slide it over. Okay, yep. Right, it's right up against that wall. The reason it has to be that far over is because if it's not, then I don't have room for my amp, that great big fat Incriminator amp right here. I've got like 5.5 inches right here, and that Incriminator amp is like 5.25 inches deep, right? So this has to be pushed all the way that way. And so it fits just fine right there, right? Like we're not having a clearance issue here, excuse me, but we are having a clearance issue here. If I shut this, try to close the seat right here, there is this mechanism that holds on to this, you know, that latches the seat shut, and there's like a bar, like this part of the seat squishes in, but it comes to about right here where it's like a metal, like a latch, and it's running into this corner here, so the seat won't latch all the way. Well, it will latch all the way, but then it pushes the box back this way. So we're gonna have to take our router or something and notch that out to about right there, probably to about right there too. Take that corner down some, and then see if we can get that to fit. Okay guys, finally got this thing to fit. And as you can see from the look on my face, it is another hot day here in Arizona. But remember, we need this to slide. This has to be touching this wall. It has to, or else I don't have enough space here for my amp. And so I kept trying to get it to fit. And like I showed you guys, I was hitting this mechanism here. So as you saw, I ended up using my skill saw, and I even used my my Sawzall to take this corner off, and then I just hand sanded it smooth. But as you can see, I did the same thing over here. I had to take a big hunk of it out, which is why I'm glad that I ended up putting in this extra little meat to bite into, because I almost took off that whole board. Now that looks ugly as crap, but I'm gonna smooth that out, not a big deal, and you're not gonna see that. But the reason I did that is, on this seat and that seat, there's two steel pipes here, basically, that hold the shape of the seat. So this you can squish in, this you cannot, right? So every time I'd close this seat, it would push the box this way, and then it would pull it away from that. And so I ended up having to notch that out too. So anyway, let's get it slid all the way over. Shut this. See, it's still tight, but it fits. And let's see. Oh, here, we'll just grab that. So that big Incriminator amp is about, I think, 5.1, something like that. Oops. But anyway, you can see here, we've got about 5 1/4. So that Incriminator amp will fit right in here without touching this, barely. I mean, you'll be able to slide a piece of paper in there, but it will fit. And I think I'm gonna replace this mounting board. This is 3/4 MDF. I think I'm gonna replace this with 1/2 inch. Then that'll give us another 1/4 inch to play with. And then of course I'm going to mount this, bolt this to this mounting platform here. That way it doesn't slide and hit my amp. But anyway, finally got this bad boy to fit. It does work, you know, like well, hold on. Another issue I ran into is this guy right here. Right, the sub just barely hits this when I mount it. So I'm either gonna have to just cut a little piece out of here, like that, or just maybe mount the sub, maybe don't mount it inverted. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do yet, but the sub does run into that, but that's just a piece of hollow plastic. So I could easily just Dremel that out a little bit and then it would fit just fine. But anyway, that's how it's coming, guys. Finally got that bad boy to fit. Now it's just time for some finish work. Okay guys, still trying to get this box to fit in this car, and I think I finally got it. So that's in there. Oop, that seat's not latched. There it is now. So let me show you what I ended up having to do. Okay. So remember these two bars right here that were hitting this box and pushing it forward. Okay, you can see I notched that out and then just smoothed it down. So there's like a little dip right here. right? And then I took this angle off as much as I could. And the same thing was happening, excuse me, the same thing was happening right here. There's a little plate in here that goes all the way across. You can see the sawdust where it was hitting. But basically all I did was I just took, there's a little sharp corner right here. I just took that down. And what I used to do that was my angle grinder. I just kind of used a flap wheel or a lap wheel or whatever, and just kind of just cut all that off of there. Right, so you can see how that's all kind of rounded over. And it fits all the way up tight, right? So now we got enough room for our amp. Now, guys, I know it's not perfect. And like I said at the beginning of the video, I put some progress pictures of this thing up on a box building chat group. And man, it got a lot of hate. And, you know, it's easy to get discouraged when that kind of thing is happening. But if that's you, don't let it discourage you, right? Like, this is my first time building the Kerf box. I'm still kind of new to this. Like, I get the basic concepts, but my woodworking skills aren't the greatest. I'll be the first to admit that. And so this is how we learn how to do things, right? Like, trial and error. Like, we try it and next time we do a little better. But you're never going to learn if you don't try it, right? And so that's all I'm doing, and I'm just taking you guys along with the process, or taking you guys along with me through this process. So it's going to look a lot better than it does right now. We're going to texture it. We're going to put some splatter paint on it. These imperfections that you see here with the bare wood, you're not even going to see them once I paint this. So I think it's going to look good, and you know, who cares what haters say, right? It doesn't really matter. All right, guys, so got a little bit of more work done here. I got all this about as smoothed out as I really care to get it. Right, I took that down some. I even filled in some of these little bitty cracks with some wood glue. I got this side smoothed out. Where this meets this edge, I got that smoothed out. Where this meets this edge, I got that smoothed out. Right, and really all I used was my grinder with a little lap wheel, and I hand sanded it. Took a while. And you can see this is not, I don't know if the camera's really picking it up, but this is relatively smooth. It's got some texture to it, but remember, we're gonna add texture to this. So all of this is gonna disappear. What we wanna do now is focus on sealing up the inside so there are no leaks. And we're gonna do that in 2 steps. First, we're gonna use this fiberglass resin. Then once that sets up and dries, we're gonna use some Flex Seal, just to make sure there aren't any little cracks or any surprises. So I think what I'm gonna do is use my paint tray. I'm gonna close the door, obviously, because this stuff is UV reactant. If you don't know about this stuff doesn't set up until it hits UV lights. So I'm gonna have to shut that. But I'm just gonna kind of dump this in there and then use my paintbrush to literally spread it around the whole inside of the box. So let me get that done, and then I'll bring you guys back for an update. So as you can see, the resin actually works really, really well. Like, that's really hard. The problem is I had it sitting upright, and so I had it sitting on this front face. So all the resin wants to just slide down, obviously go with gravity. So I think I'm gonna do this in a couple stages, where I just dump a bunch of resin in there, let it sit on one side to coat one side, and then just kind of do that in a couple of different stages. So we're gonna coat this bottom side here, you know, to cover in all these holes. Then I'm gonna take it outside and let it cure in the sun. Then we're gonna do the same thing, tip it up and just keep tipping it to where I can get a really even thick coat of the resin on every side of it. Okay, I don't know if you can see that in there, but we got like a 1/4 of an inch thick layer of resin in there. So that's gonna coat that and seal all those little screw holes up. You know, it's not that I'm afraid that they're not sealed, because there's wood glue in there as well, but this is really gonna just help us make sure it's airtight and strong. Okay guys, plenty of UV radiation going on here. As you can see, the entire inside is coated with that resin. I even got some of the cracks here on the outside. I filled that hole with a screw. We're gonna put some cover over that. You won't see that. But basically all I did was I just took that gallon and just dumped it in there. Took my paintbrush, swirled it around, laid it over on its side, did the same thing, made sure I got every little crack, and put plenty of it in there. So anyway, we'll let this sit out here and cure till the sun goes down basically. Then I'll bring you guys back on and let you know how it turned out. Okay, a little update for you guys. Man, what an excellent day to be doing this. The sun is out, it's like 100 degrees out, and this thing has been cooking all day. I just went to work, put it outside before I left, and I just got back. You can see the whole inside of that is just basically glazed with a 1/4 inch thick of that resin. Right, all these holes are filled in, right? Like everything, even up here. All right, all of that is just solid. Right, all of that is solid. So you can see, I mean, you can see that it's like it looks like it's wet, but it's not. So anyway, that'll be how we seal that bad boy up. No leaks here, no sir. Now I think what we're gonna try to work on is some finishing work. Try to clean up some of these edges. Just make it look a little nicer, you know? I think I am gonna take a crack at some Bondo filler hair. We got this stuff right here. Right, and I've actually already done it. This part of the video is a little bit out of order, but there were just some gaps in my woodwork that would bother me if I left them. Like this edge didn't quite meet. There was a hole right there. You know, there were some other areas that like here, right? Like this didn't quite meet, that didn't quite meet. And so even though we are gonna texture it, I just some of those gaps were too big for me to feel comfortable with. So we use, like I said, the Bondo hair. It's basically Bondo filler with fiberglass hair strands in it. You can kind of see the consistency of it there. It's my first time working with it, and the very first try I made at it, I made it way too hot. That means I put too much catalyst in it, and it hardened up even before I was done mixing it. So it takes some trial and error to really get the proper consistency, or the proper mixture rather. But we're just gonna rough sand this, get it smooth enough where those gaps aren't there, and then we're gonna be done. Because remember, this doesn't have to be smooth. I just wanted to fill those holes. All right, so this has been sitting for about half an hour, and it's dry enough to sand. So I've got this sanding sponge, and I'm not gonna sand it smooth, remember? I'm just gonna kind of knock off all this stuff here, right? That way it's smooth enough to paint. That's really all we're going for here. You can see I've already kind of started it here. If we can just get it to look like that, then it'll be fine. So let me get that done, and then I'll update you guys. All right, so now we're just gonna pre-drill these holes so we can put in our T-nuts. I mean, it's pretty simple. You just put the sub in there and you just run your drill through the hole, right? There, piece of cake. Do that all the way around. Then we'll have, we'll put our T-nuts in there. We got all those holes drilled out, as you can see. Mounting holes for the port. There you go. And we got T-nuts on there. Yeah, there you go. That way I can just pull those bolts in and out of there as many times as I want. Now over here you can see, instead of T-nuts, I had to run threaded inserts just because there wasn't enough lip here for a T-nut to bite onto. But we got T-nuts in all the other holes except these three. Oh, and here's my port. You can see I got that fresh bead, that E6000 on there. Got it on the bottom and on the top. So once that dries up, there we go. Once that dries up, that'll be good to go. Be ready to paint that. So we're getting there, guys. Almost ready for paint. Oh man, I love the way this turned out, guys. Check this out. Look at that. Man, that looks good. So this is 2 coats of the Duratex. Been out here for about half an hour and it's already completely dry. And man, it just looks so good. I'm always happy with the way this stuff turns out. Yeah, and there are some imperfections here. There's a little bit of a slope here. A little bit of a slope here. But man, this coating really covers it a lot, right? And there's a little bit of a slope here, kind of uneven. But you can see now with that Bondo glass and the Duratex, it's a lot gentler of an imperfection. It's not like just like a hard line, right? Man, that looks good. Oh yeah, I'm really happy with that. Now here's the port. Guys, that's 3 layers, 3 coats rather, of this acrylic paint. Now, this is the flange, obviously. And then we can stack PVC on top of it and on the bottom, and it's gonna sit right there. So, what we got left to do is some splatter paint. All right, Husky Baseheads, well, that's the video. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me on that one. I know that was a long video, but you know, I hope you learned something. And even if you didn't, I hope maybe this inspires you to try something new, right? Like for myself, I'd never done a Curf before. I'd never really worked with fiberglass resin before. I'd never really worked with Bondo hair before. So a lot of the things I did in this video was me trying it for the first time. And as you see, the process as you go through it can be kind of ugly, right? Like that box was pretty ugly a couple of different times. I think it looks great now. It's not perfect, but I think it looks good. But there were some times where it did not look good. And like I said, I got some pretty nasty comments on it when I posted it to a page earlier as I was building it. And so just, you know, don't let people discourage you, right? Like, how do you learn things? By trying them, right? How do you really learn something? By trying something and then messing up, right? Like, you learn something, you mess up, now you know what not to do next time, right? Like, this is great with DIY. That's why DIY is so great, because the more you DIY, the more you learn. The more you know how to do something until eventually you're good at it. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I appreciate you guys watching, and always play your music loud, because if you don't, nobody's gonna hear you.